Hello, and welcome to what I think is going to be the final segment of The Secret of Light by Walter Russell. We're in section 3, and here we go. This curved universe consists of lenses and mirrors of light, which reflect, bend, curve, concentrate, and decentrate light into its countless forms. Any action anywhere is repeated everywhere by and through countless mirror planes of wave fields and the lenses of space, figures 40 and 41. Concentrated spheres such as the Earth and Sun are surrounded by layers of light of equal pressures. Clouds float around the Earth in them. The reason they float in curves parallel to the Earth is because of these spherical equipotential planes of pressures which curve as the Earth curves. Curved pressures of light act as lenses to multiply and divide light radially. Light rays which pass through curved planes concentrate toward a point when projected through light lenses of space in the convex direction and decentrate when they pass through in the concave direction, figures 42 and 43. Gravity and radioactivity are accounted for by this fact. Every object which falls toward the Earth falls radially towards its center because of this fact. No two men who stand upright in balance with gravity stand parallel to each other. Lines drawn through the feet and head of any two men standing in either hemisphere would form a cone with its base in the heavens and its apex at Earth's center. Rain falling vertically from a cloud falls conically. The area of the base of the cone in the cloud is greater than its conical measurement on the Earth, figures 44 and 45. The electric potential of rain increases as it falls because of multiplication of pressures by the lenses of light which surround the Earth. For the same reason, a man weighs less as he ascends a mountain and regains it when descending. And here we are on the next page, and obviously there's something missing because we're picking up in the middle of a sentence and the last page ended a sentence. So I don't know. You guys help me out if you know what it is. Leave a comment. But here we go, picking up in the middle of a sentence with figure 50 as the first figure. Are born with centripetal and centrifugal spirals meet. Matter registers the potential of the position of its birth. For that reason, it floats in equipotential orbits appropriate to its position in its wave field, together with all units of its system. In the electric current, electronic systems are born where the familiar loops of force occur around a charged wire, figure 50. Figures 51, 52, and 53 diagram electric systems forming at AA. The spiral is an incomplete sphere, just as crystal forms are incomplete cubes. Spirals and crystals have individuality which they lose by avoidance in the oneness of spheres and cubes. Individuality is given bodies for the purpose of manifesting separateness and multiplicity. Individuality, separateness, and multiplicity are then voided in oneness. Individuality in every creating thing is a moment-to-moment record of its unfoldment and refoldment. It is the fruit of cosmic desire for creative expression. It begins when the cycle begins, ends with its ending, and repeats itself in each cycle until the entire cycle of any expressed idea is voided in its completion. Two-way sex-conditioned spirals are the consummate individuals of all creation. They condition all bodies with the condition of their bodies. They unfold all idea from stillness of mind knowing into moving form of mind imagining, and refold it into the stillness of mind knowing. They are the electric workers which fulfill desire of mind by interweaving threads of light into patterned forms and recording those patterned forms in the still light which centers every spiral pair, as the axis of a cone centers the cone. The one centering axis of both spirals is the shaft upon which the dynamic universe rotates. All motion rotates and revolves upon still centering shafts, and all shafts are two-way extensions of points, which lead to and through centers of spheres. The familiar wave line, which records all effects of motion, controls those effects. One can record that wave line but is not aware of the fact that it is the power extended by the Creator in the measure of desire for power. The wave line is a record of the amount of energy borrowed from its static equator to express any mechanical process, such as the vibration of a harp string, the pulsations of an engine, the cardiogram of one's heartbeat, or the pattern of an earthquake, as recorded by a seismograph. Figures 54, 55, 56, 57, and 58. The shaft of a wave is a line drawn through every point upon the surface of a wave-disturbed ocean in a vertical section, where water and sky meet. Around the still shaft of the wave, all motion of the wave spirals to interweave the patterns and forms of desire. All spiral forms must have intense individuality in order to express such amazing varieties of form and pattern. Figure 59. The inside-out, outside-in turnings of all creating forms is due to the gradual unfolding, refolding principle of nature. This process is controlled by spiral pairs, which are motivated by still centering shafts of magnetic light. Opposed pairs of spirals gradually expand centrifugally to planes meeting at static equators to complete the unfolding half of a cycle. They then contract as the opposite of what they were to complete the other half. During the entire journey, they continue without reversal of direction. A clockwise spiral is always a clockwise spiral during its entire centripetal journey to its apex and its centrifugal journey to its base. The opposed pair which rotate upon the same shaft are anti-clockwise, for both are projected through each other. Figure 60. The characteristic unfolding, refolding, inside-out, outside-in principle of nature causes the integration of matter at poles and disintegration at equators. Matter integrates by the contraction of one pair of spirals around the shafts which wind it into spheres by the way of their poles, and disintegrates it by the expansion of the other pair which unwind it by way of equators. The pair of spirals which wind light waves into spheres continue that winding until holes are bored through spheres and rings are formed, aided by the centrifugal force exerted by the expansion of the opposing spirals. Rings are the death half of the cycles of spheres. Rings recondense around points in space and rewind as spheres. The majestic ring nebula in Lyra, Figure 61, is an outstanding example of the disintegration process of nature. The ring exemplifies the death half of the cycle and the newly formed sun, at its center the life half. A new body has been born out of the old one as it expanded into the heavens. The heavens abound with new bodies appearing from old ones which have disappeared into another form. The Owl Nebula demonstrates this principle by 2 rings and 2 stars reborn from them. Figure 62. The rings of Saturn will become moons, just as its other rings have become its several other moons. Our own moon was born from a ring from Earth as it expands its bulk by absorbing its oceans and accelerates its rotation as all the outer planets have done. Figure 63. Jupiter is even now developing belts, which will be thrown off as rings to become moons. These moons will become comets and eventually plunge into the sun, as all things in this solar system likewise do. Figure 64 illustrates the unwinding process by means of which moons free themselves from the bindings of their mother shaft to again seek revolution around the shaft of their beginning in the sun. Disintegration of suns and planets by radiation is accompanied by flattening at their poles. Spheres come into being by prolating and go out by oblating. Ever-increasing speed of rotation around shafts is the cause of this phenomenon. Inner planets rotate very slowly upon their own shafts because they are so close to their mother shaft in the sun, but they revolve very swiftly in their orbits around the sun. Figure 65. Mercury, our own moon, and Phobos, the inner moon of Mars, are so close to their mother shaft that they are obliged to revolve swiftly, with the same face always toward their primary. The outer planets have so far broken away from the influence of their mother shaft in the sun that their years have materially lengthened, their days conspicuously shortened, and their faces are constantly changing in relation to the sun. Cyclones, waterspouts, and tornadoes develop on our Earth when spirals tighten around their shafts. For the more they thus contract, the greater their speed. When spirals are so wide at their bases that the angles to the Earth's surface are negligible, there is calmness and peace. Stillness at 90 degrees to the Earth's surface, they then do inestimable damage. Figure 66. The universal octave. The heartbeat of the universe, starting from zero of rest, spirals from its minimum to its maximum and back again to zero, in 4 pairs of opposite actions and reactions. These 4 pairs of opposite electric interweavers constitute the universal spiral octave wave by means of which the dynamic universe of effect rises from the static universe of cause. Figure 67. The octave wave formula which governs all motion and its birth position in the universal wave is as follows in Figure 68. Figure 68 is the two-way journey from 0 through 0 to 0. 0 to 4 means the centripetal direction toward the apex of the spiral, which leads to higher potential, density, gravity, and the white heat of incandescence. 4 to 0 means the centrifugal direction toward the base of the spiral, which leads to lower pressure, lower potential, vacuity, radioactivity, and the black cold of space. Each of these is half of a cycle. The reason an octave cannot be counted from 1 to 8 instead of from 1 to 4 is because each of the pressures which bear the relations of 1 to 4 positive in the octave is a credit pressure, which has its equal opposite debit pressure in 1 to 4 negative. The elements of matter, born on the spiral pairs of opposites as tones, have the same relation as tones of music have to the octave wave. All wave motion is expressed in 8 tones, 4 pairs of opposites. The middle pair is seemingly 1. The octave is usually expressed as 7 for this reason. An octave is a series of orderly harmonic tones. Tones are multiplied in divided pressures of light, spaced rhythmically with mathematical precision upon each octave wave of motion. The law which applies to one effect of motion applies to all, whether sound wave, electric current, color spectrum, or octaves of elements of matter. No state of motion has permanence or even duration. Everything is forever in a state of transition, changing its position in its wave by either multiplying or dividing its vibration, frequencies to change its conditioning. The basis of all octaves is the keynote of rest, from which the octave springs to express the idea which lies within the magnetic stillness of that keynote. The fulcrum of the wave of musical octaves is its keynote, from which all tonal changes in the octave are mathematically calculated in wave frequencies and volume. That keynote is always in one's consciousness, whether the note is being sounded or not. It is the balance of its octave. All tones are out of balance with it at all times and forever desire balance. No state of motion can evade the keynote of rest from which it sprang, nor can it be separated from it electrically in matter or consciously in mind. No matter what instrument produces octave tones, its frequencies and other dimensions must be in the orderliness demanded by the opening and closing spiral pairs, which control those tones by conditioning them. Likewise, no matter what the instrument, whether larynx of man, string of violin, carbon wave field, or color spectrum, its sole motivating power for producing change of dimensions for the purpose of producing change of tone is electric pressure directed by desire and borrowed from the keynote of the octave's stillness. Furthermore, all power thus borrowed from one expression in any octave tone must be in balance with the opposite of that tone within which those borrowings have been debited. This outstanding fact of natural law must be borne in mind in considering those principles as applied to the mechanics of the universal wave, which produces the octave wave tones of the elements of matter with such precision that any effect produced by any of them in combination or separately will produce that same effect always. The elements of matter. An invariable characteristic of nature is to express life-death cycles of any idea in 9 lesser interweaving cycles enfolded in the one. When we think of man as an idea, we think of him as grown up to fullness of middle age. Until then, we think of generating man as infant, child, and youth. Following his generating cycles come the degenerative ones, in which he gradually repays all of his borrowings from his zero of rest and returns to that zero to again borrow power to re-express the idea of man. Figure 71. This process of nature, which expresses its cycles of idea in 9 lesser cycles, is conspicuously present in the life-death cycles of the elements of matter. Carbon alone expresses the idea of matter. All the 9 octaves of the elements are stages of unfoldment and refoldment of carbon. The first 4.5 octaves lead to the maturity of carbon by the generative contraction of gravity. It is the hardest of all the other stages of its transition, having the highest melting point. The last 4.5 octaves lead from maturity through old age to disappearance at the end of the 9-octave cycle by the radiative expansion of vacuity. Figure 70. Genero-activity begins at the birth of carbon in the first octave with genero-active, inner explosive speed of light, which is 186,400 miles per second. It ends with an equal radioactive outer explosive speed. This speed is the limit at which motion can reproduce itself in curved wave fields before reaching zero, where motion and curvature cease. Carbon fulfills the plan of the Creator in his desire to create but one form, the cube sphere. Carbon alone crystallizes in true cube, with all of the qualities of the true cube and sphere fully exemplified. All other elements which crystallize as cubes are octave extensions of carbon. All such extensions occupy the 404 position of wave amplitude. In carbon are all of the elements of its previous stages, just as in man are all the actions and reactions of his previous stages. Hydrogen is a 1-octave younger prototype of carbon. It forms on the wave amplitude at 404, just as carbon forms at 404, 1 octave ahead. In hydrogen is a whole octave of elemental tones. Several of these have been recently discovered and wrongly named isotopes. Isotopes are split tones, such as those which a violinist could produce between full tones. An amazing thing happens at this point in the unfolding of carbon's life record. Hydrogen's melting point is 259 degrees below 0 centigrade, and in 1 octave, the winding up process of nature acts like a whiplash at its halfway position, where genero-activity and radioactivity meet as equals. This effect tightens the winding of carbon into such a dense substance that the melting point jumps to 3,600 degrees above 0 in that 1 octave. Nature immediately counterbalances this accelerative action by dropping nitrogen, the next element beyond carbon, into a gas which melts at 210 degrees below 0 centigrade. It does not recover from the gaseous condition during the rest of its octave. The cosmic seed of the carbon octave is helium. Silicon is 1 octave older than carbon. The melting point of silicon drops to less than 1/2 of its younger stage, 1420 degrees. The cosmic seed of the silicon octave is neon. When carbon becomes still another octave older at the 404 position of cobalt in the 6th octave, it divides its full tone into 10 split isotope tones, 5 on either side, figure 70. Carbon at this stage has lost much of its vitality and changes its character by thus dividing it into cobalt isotopes. Its melting point has dropped to 1480 degrees, which is slightly higher than the silicon stage of carbon. Because of sharing that position with 10 others, it has lost much of its true cube-sphere quality of balance, which the 404 position manifests. The evidence of that is the metallic quality of cobalt, which would be impossible in the true cube sphere position of 404 in the octave wave. The 404 position is one of balance between the pairs of metallic opposites, such as iron and nickel, manganese and copper, chromium and zinc, or sodium and chlorine. When any of these pairs lose their metallic quality, such as iron and oxygen in iron rust, or sodium and chlorine in sodium chloride, they find both rest and balance in the stony quality of the salts. They crystallize in the cubic system if they are equal or near equal opposite pairs. Sodium chloride is a good example. One can see its approximately true cubes in sodium chloride, ordinary table salt, or in the distorted cube crystals of sodium iodide. The 404 position in the octaves of the elements is the position of rest, where any action must end its half cycle and begin its other half. It comes to a point of rest before returning to a point of rest, as all actions and reactions in nature do. At one octave of still further aging, carbon becomes rhodium and again climbs to its amplitude position at 404 by 5 efforts and descends by 5 more. Rhodium is more vital than cobalt, for its melting point is 1950 degrees, figure 70. The cosmic seed of rhodium octave is krypton. Great vitality is often evidenced in nature's creations after they have fully matured. The radioactive death principle is as vital in disintegrating the body as generoactive principle is in integrating it. That vitality is enhanced by the opposition of the generoactive resistance set up against it. Such strong vital metals as silver, nickel, copper, tantalum, tungsten, osmium, platinum, and gold belong to the aging half cycles of carbon. Tantalum is a radioactive metal which becomes so dense because of opposition between the two electric conditioners that its melting point reaches 3400 degrees centigrade, or within 200 degrees of carbon. Osmium follows with a melting point of 2700 degrees, and platinum at 1755 degrees. In this octave, the violent drop from carbon's melting point to nitrogen's melting point at minus 210 is balanced by this corresponding generoactive reaction. In the next octave of carbon's aging, the radioactive death principle becomes more evident in lutetium. After reaching its 3 position in the positive half of its octave, it arrives at its balanced position of 404, only after making 13 efforts, as evidenced by 13 isotopes including unknowns. These are balanced by 13 in the negative half cycle. Among these 13 is the vital tungsten, a negative metal of great commercial value. By bombarding this metal with a sufficiently high current to cause it to disintegrate, it will discharge its seed of inert cosmic gases, just as an oak tree will discharge its cosmic seed in acorns. The cosmic seed of the lutetium octave is xenon. The cosmic seed of carbon's last octave of disappearance arises from the inert gas nitron. Octaves unfold from their past recorded seed, and they must have a seed into which their present record can refold. That principle is absolute in nature. Radium and actinium evidence the going to seed process of all completed cycles of growing things in a strong measure. One can see this process taking place in radium without resorting to the electrocution process referred to as applied to tungsten. A small telescopic instrument, the spinthariscope, contains a needle upon which a microscopic portion of radium has been placed in front of a fluorescent screen. By looking through its lenses in the dark, one can see the shedding of the cosmic seed of the slowly dying carbon in its radium stage as the rays of those cosmic seeds bombard the screen. The effect is beautiful, like looking into the heavens on a starry night with all of its stars twinkling into appearance and disappearance, as fireflies twinkle in the meadow on a dark night. Carbon never comes within perception at tomium, but its efforts to reach tomium are evidenced in the uranium group of isotopes, of which there are 15 before tomium is reached. Out of this group, several have been found and made use of, especially those from which the atom bomb has been produced. figure 70. Radioactivity has so nearly reached its maximum at this point that the speed of the cosmic seed shed by these isotopes has been measured at 180,000 miles per second, which is approximately the speed of light nearing its ending point at Tomion, where the octave again begins at Alphanon. The inert gases. The octaves of the elements of matter grow from seed, just as all things grow from seed. From the moment the elements unfold from their seed, they are in a constant state of transition from the beginning of their cycle to the end. Elements are not fixed, created things. They are pressure conditions of light waves. Those conditions of light pressures are constantly changing from infancy to old age in the elements of matter, just as they are in the animal kingdom. The inert gases are cosmic elements which will not combine with any other elements. They constitute the recording system of this creating universe. They surround the zero from which motion springs and to which it returns. They represent minimum motion in the wave, just as amplitudes represent maximum motion. They are the seeds of the octaves of matter, and each octave has a different seed, just as different trees have different seeds. Elements are waves, and waves disappear and reappear. God's recording system does not allow any creating thing to disappear without recording the actions and reactions of its stages of appearance. All states of motion are recorded in the inert gases. In the inert gases are the souls of their bodily manifestations in the universe of motion. In them is desire for expression, and the pattern form of that desire. The cosmic inert gases fill all space between the stars of heaven. They insulate the states of motion from each other by their balancing zero. They bring all motion into being through the will of the Creator, true to the pattern of desire. They are the source of balancing cosmic rays which interchange between zero and matter. They vitalize matter with the omnipotence of creative desire which lies within the zero of these cosmic rays. There are 9 cosmic gases, the first and the last being one. Alphanon begins the cycle and ends it. There is no beginning and no ending. The list of cosmic gases follows: Alphanon, Betanon, Gammanon, helium, neon, argon, krypton, xenon, and niton. Spectrum analysis. The known octaves which lie within the range of perception are 5 1/2. These begin with the third or hydrogen octave and end with the uranium group, which are isotopes of actinium and tomium in the last octave. The invisible octaves of finely divided matter of space are 3 1/2 in number. These octaves are beyond our range of perception, but they are not beyond our knowing. Light is the universal language. Through spectrum analysis of light waves, man has been able to analyze and recognize each element when in its incandescent stage. By means of the spectroscope, he has been enabled to divide light rays through its prisms into the component parts which make up the life history of each stage of its two-way cycle. Each element tells the story of its entire previous incarnations in other octaves since its beginning. Any line in one octave is repeated in the next, but shifted in position because of the changing pressures of each succeeding octave. The spectrum of hydrogen is preponderantly red. A bright red line indicates its present octave. Other red lines tell its past history in lower octaves. The simple history of hydrogen, as compared to the complex spectrum of iron, is like the history of an obscure youth as compared to that of Napoleon. In the spectrum analysis of iron, the lines which belong to iron and those which tell its recent and remote history can be seen at a glance. These lines also indicate the relative ability of the iron atom to charge or discharge. Wavelength 7181.8 is immediately recognizable as belonging to iron in its present octave. 6916.8 is recent history and 6944.8 is extremely remote history. Herein follows a partial list of lines whose wavelengths belong to iron or to its immediate midtone associates, and also other lists indicating its recent and its more remote history. and it has a diagram belonging to iron, recent history, remote history. So you guys can see that I will include this at the end. The visible and invisible spectrum is divided into several thousand lines. Each line is different in its shade of color and in its plane. Each line proves that this universe of varying motion is a universe of varying pressures. Atomic structure. The elements of matter are not different substances or different things. They are different pressure conditions of light waves. The light units of the elements are all alike, but are differently conditioned by the electric pressures exerted upon them during the inward or outward spiral journey from 0 to 0. The unanswered mystery of how the elements become mathematically precise octave tones, just as musical tones or color tones of the spectrum are mathematically precise in vibration orderliness, lies in the wave field gyroscopic principle. Together, the 8 elements of an octave form 2 halves of one whole cycle of tones, which ascend from 0 to 4, 0, 4 position of amplitude, and then descend again to 0 to begin anew. This spiral journey contracts into greater pressures as it approaches wave field amplitude positions at spiral apices, and expands into lower ones on the return journey to spiral bases. That two-way spiral journey of each half cycle extends between 6 mirrors of still light, which compose the wave field, and wind around a still shaft, which centers the spiral. 3 of these mirrors are the mirrors of action, and 3 are the mirrors of reaction, figure 75. The 3 of action are the inner intersection planes of the cube, and the 3 of reaction are the outer boundary planes of the wave field. All of these planes of the wave field are of 0 curvature, but the spiral universe which is forming within those planes is curved. Curved planes of light act as two-way lenses which bend light to focal points and extend it from those focal points radially. As the two-way spirals of forming matter extend from the wave field center in opposite directions toward wave field intersections, the 6 mirror planes of still light focus 3 points of still light upon the still shaft of each half cycle. Centers are formed at these focal points which become the 1, 2, 3 positive and negative elements of matter by rotating gyroscopically around the wheels of light, which act as equators for those borning tones. Multiplying and dividing pressures determine the density and volume of each succeeding element. The color spectrum records these pressures as the complete history of every element, from octave to octave of the whole 9-octave cycle of the elements. Multiplying pressures of the spiral also affect the curvature of its light lenses to such an extent that the focusing positions change their mathematical ratios in conformity with the acceleration of gravity and the deceleration of radiation. The positions of focal centers of gyroscopic wheels upon the wave shaft are thus affected, as diagrammed in Figure 76 and Figure 72. Each element is the square of the distance to and from its succeeding one, in accordance with its direction. The direction of gravity is the inverse square, and the opposite direction is the direct square. The volume of each succeeding element is likewise affected directly and inversely as the cube. 6 of the 8 gyroscopic wheels of the whole octave are thus accounted for by geometric projection of two-way opposed lights through each other, from 2 sets of 3 mirror boundary fields. The 4th double tone is formed at the rest point where 8 cube wave fields meet. This is the point of rest, which is known as the center of gravity in Earth's or Sun's, where motion and curvature cease. The complete sphere thus becomes a section of 8 adjoining wave fields and revolves around that point of rest upon the wave shaft where the 2 half cycles of the wave meet. For this reason, the 4-0-4 position is one of balance, in which the yellow of orange is the dominating color of one of its 2 gyroscopic wheels, and the yellow of green is the other, centered by white. At the 2 points upon the still shaft of the turning sphere, where the shaft penetrates its surface, are the magnetic poles of still light, which control the balance of each sphere's turning. One of these is the north magnetic pole, which controls the winding of the sphere into density by centripetal electric force, and the other is the south magnetic pole, which controls its unwinding centrifugally into space. In a sphere such as our nearly mature sun, these magnetic poles are practically upon the sun's poles of rotation, but upon oblating planets, such as our Earth, the magnetic poles are removed from that pole of rotation in accordance with the measure of the Earth's oblateness. The elements of matter are miniature stellar systems. Every principle and law which applies to one applies to the other. This solar system is a gyroscopic wheel in the position which iron occupies in the elemental series. When it spirals a little further, it will correspond to a carbon atom. The sun will then be a true sphere, and its new planets will also be true spheres. The gyroscopic principle accounts for that law of nature, which causes like elements to seek each other. All decomposing components are sorted out, element by element, gyroscopically. The efforts of man to transmute one element into another must be governed by this principle, and not upon the theory that another substance will be obtained by knocking out one electron. It makes no difference how many planets there are in a solar or atomic system, insofar as its substance as an element is concerned. One or more added or subtracted would not change the element into another substance, any more than one or more children would affect the nationality of their parents. Transmutation will become simplified by observing that the plane of gyration in relation to amplitude and the speed of revolution of the gyroscopic wheel upon its still shaft will alone change volume by either multiplying or dividing density. Great possibilities in new metals lie in the proper application of this principle. The shape of the universe. This ageless universe has no shape. It has a seeming infinite extension, but that extension is a reflected one. This electric universe of two-way extended light is but a series of mirrors which reflect into each other through curved lenses. Its seeming extension might be likened to a light within a mirror-bound room. One light within such a mirrored enclosure would seemingly extend infinitely, but the light thus mirrored would be the same light. The reflected extension would have no reality. The idea of continuity or discontinuity is based upon mirrored effect of an initial cause. Continuity infers time. Time is but one of the effects which constitutes this universe. Time flows two ways, but the senses detect only the forward flow. They cannot detect the backward flow, which cancels out the forward flow. Time is as unreal as the wave universe is unreal. What is true in principle of one wave is true of all waves. Each wave is a two-way reflected extension of an equilibrium zero, which we call a vibration. Vibrations appear, disappear, and reappear from their source of rest to manifest idea, which is existent alone in rest. Just as the vibration of one wave disappears into its zero of universal stillness, so do all vibrations disappear into the universal zero of stillness. This zero universe of vibrating waves can have no shape other than a seeming one. The voiding principle. This is a zero universe of seeming mechanical motion of force exerted in a seeming three-dimensional universe. Every action of any nature begins with zero, counts up to 9 to end and begin again at 0. Beyond 9 it cannot go, but up to 9 it must go. 9 is universal. 9 is universal because it is the wave field number, the 8 of the cube centered by the 0 of gravity in the sphere. Our decimal system is based upon the wave field of the cube sphere. It is as follows: 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0 equals 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The musical scale and the spectrum of nature correspond to the wave field tones. They are as follows: musical 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Tones do, re, mi, fa, sol, rest, sol, fa, mi, re, do. spectrum, black, red, red, orange, yellow, white, yellow, green, blue, blue, black. Underneath it's the black and red, it's got violet on either end. Figure 75 demonstrates this fact. The three centering planes are centered by 0. All intersections of these planes add up to 8. 8 centered by their 0 source equals 9. Likewise, the cube itself adds up to 8 by counting the intersections of its 6 faces. Also, there are 8 directions of action and 8 of reaction, each 8 being 4 pairs, which are 9 by adding the centering 0. 9 is the 3 times 3 of length, breadth, and height extended from 0. The length, breadth, and height of any expression is 2 extended zeros centered by 0. Figure 2, page 219. Length and breadth are static, for they are both on equipotential levels. Height is dynamic, for it's radial. The universal 9 of matter and space is 3 mirrors of rest, centered by rest, from which all 3 extend at right angles to each other, each mirroring itself into the other. Figure 75. The universal 9 of the octave is 4 pairs of opposite pressures extending diagonally from 0, which centers the cube, to 8 zeros which corner the cube. Figure 75. The measure of extension from 0 to 0 is desire for extension. Desire for extension from 0 to 0 is energy in 0. Energy extended from 0 to 0 is manifested by pressures of desire equally multiplied and divided, equally added and subtracted, equally credited and debited, and equally and oppositely conditioned. The sum of all these balanced effects is 0. Figure 75. 0 pressures equally multiplied and divided are manifested by the action and reaction of motion. Motion is a projection of the opposed energy pressures of desire from within a centering 0 to the extended mirrors of rest, which measure desire and mirror it back to rest in the centering 0 as expressed desire. The sum of dually reflected motion thus expressed is 0. 0 thus extended by action to fulfill desire for expression, and simultaneously mirrored back to manifest the fulfillment of expressed desire, is all there is to this universe of rest. 0 multiplied or divided, added or subtracted, extended or retracted, results in 0. This is a 0 universe in all effects of motion, a seeming universe in time and sequence, and a mirage of universe of imaged forms. It is a universe of 2 negations which simultaneously cancel each other and sequentially repeat the canceling of their negations to create the illusion that 0 can be multiplied or divided or added to or subtracted from to create a reality which never is nor can become. Figure 75. That is what creation is. It is the imagining of knowing. Knowing is light. Light is still. Imagining is thinking. Thinking is the imagined action and reaction of motion mirrored from 0 of rest to 0 of rest. This is a still universe of the light of knowing. In it is no activity. But what about our senses? Our senses tell us otherwise. Our senses are inadequate. They deceive us mightily, and that is good. If the senses could but see the whole, there would be no play. The senses record motion alone, for the senses themselves are but motion. Motion is an illusion which only seems, it has no being. The senses do not know, but man believes that his senses do know, and in that belief lies man's confusion. The senses, being but motion, sense moving things and moving light mirrored as moving things. They sense the forward movement of an airplane piling up compression ahead of it, but they do not record the mirrored invisible counterpart of that plane, equal to it in potential and speed, moving backward into a vacuum behind the plane, which simultaneously voids the compression ahead of it. This inadequacy of the senses to record the backward flow of forward-moving things causes the illusions of sequence and of time. In Figure 77, this principle, diagrammed by arrows extending 2 ways from every element in the whole known series, indicates that integration is simultaneously balanced by disintegration. No time interval elapses between the debiting of any credit extended to opposites in nature. Figure 78 diagrams all matters as pairs of opposite conditions. Each line is connected with its opposite mate. Each of the pair is a negation of the other one. Each pair is conditioned as the two tanks of air in figure 18 and the storage battery in figure 19 on page 231 are conditioned. Each one of these elemental pairs is an equal and opposite mirrored extension from a centering zero fulcrum. The fulcrum of all effect is the one light of God. God alone is, in man, and in all things. Every action is voided as it occurs, is repeated as it is voided, and recorded as it is repeated. From the Divine Iliad. There's some notes, but obviously I'm missing something because it talks about pages 200 and something. So I don't know if I'll be able to find that or not, but I shall give it a try because there might be something good there. Does it say what page this is? Yeah, it talks about all the way to page after, see page 280, page 279, and all that I have. How far did I go? All right. This might be it. I don't know. That principle is absolute in nature. Radium and actin... Oh my goodness. Okay. And it looks like that's it. There's some notes, but obviously I'm missing something because it talks about pages 200 and something. So I don't know if I'll be able to find that or not, but I shall give it a try because there might be something good there. Does it say what page this is? Yeah, it talks about all the way to page after, see page 280, page 279, and all that I have. How far did I go? All right. This might be it. I don't know. All right. This might be it. I don't know. I thank you guys for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. Leave me a comment. Let me know if there's another public domain book that you'd like to hear me read. I love to learn. I love to read. Take care till next time.